What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here, and back to review episode 5 of season 5 of Better Call Saul, an episode called Dedicado a Max. Sadly, we're already halfway through this season. It's been ripping right along. And my only complaint about this episode is that we had no Lalo and no Nacho, and I feel like any episode this season without those two characters feels incomplete. However, we did get a hell of a lot more scenes with Mike, who I think I've decided that when I grow up, I want to look and sound just like Jonathan Banks. I mean, I'm 43 years old. Technically, I've already kind of grown up, but I feel like he's really grown up. And I feel like if I had that kind of weathered, leathery appearance and that deep, gravelly, terrifying voice, who knows where this channel might take me. But as always, I'd like to give a shout out to the previous episode of Better Call Saul Insider, which for me is the best podcast that I'm aware of about the nuts and bolts of making a show. Whether you're interested in editing, writing, directing, acting, they cover it all, and they do the deep dive on each and every single episode, and they bring in the essential cast and crew, and they just tear it apart, put it back together, and let you know how they did it. And I learned something crazy about episode 4, which was written and directed by an individual named Gordon Smith. Now, Gordon Smith, he started out as a PA on season 3 of Breaking Bad, and now he's writing and directing episodes of Better Call Saul. And as he was describing how he got from PA to writer-director, and he said one of the key things was obviously maintaining a positive attitude. Television and film, it's backbreaking work. You go long hours without sleep, particularly if you're a director, and if you're really good at just kind of taking cat naps at night and going for weeks at a time where you're just kind of always in a fog and in a daze, then you might have a good chance of being a director. And he talked about how important it was to maintain your health, but he said the key secret to getting in good with Vince Gilligan was during a particularly hot shoot in Burbank, where he found a way to not only bring Vince Gilligan his favorite ice cream from Dairy Queen, but he found a way to keep it cold at all times. Showbiz can be a very strange animal with no clear path for climbing the ladder, but this is obviously an example of where Gordon saw an opportunity to make the powers that be take notice of him. And actor Patrick Fabian, who plays Howard, he was also on the show, and he and Gordon were talking about how much they enjoy working together, and Patrick was laughing about how whenever a director comes up to him between takes, he says, all right, well, what do you need? Like faster, louder, better? And he said whenever he would say better, Gordon would just kind of numbly nod at that and then walk away again. And Gordon places special emphasis on the fact that when you're shooting TV, you're operating with such limited budgets that everyone on the crew is vividly aware of the fact that every minute that you're not actively shooting something or getting something in the can, that you're basically just lighting money on fire and just watching it burn, and that there's this incredible sense of relief and euphoria when the actors really nail a scene. And for new filmmakers and new writers and new directors, one of the best assets they have for making a name for themselves on the show is having this extraordinary cast of total pros. My only knock against that latest episode was that there was no Vince or Peter on the episode, so sadly there were no movie references. But I think I've blathered enough about that podcast for now. Let's dive into this episode. So let's talk about Mike first. Obviously, he wakes up in Mexico where we left him in the previous episode. He's still bleeding out of his side. He tries wandering away. His health starts to fail, and the guy who patched him up finds him, sews him back up, and he tells him about a bus stop that's close by, but he urges him to hang tight, sit, and heal, and he gives him some medicine for the pain and some medicine for infection. Basically, Mike's got about a week to kill on this property, eating what looks like some delicious cooking. The big mystery for me this episode was, to whom is this large fountain dedicated, this fountain that's in the middle of this compound? Because it says Dedicado a Max, obviously means dedicated to Max, but there are times when we're talking about Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad where I don't know each and every single reference, and so I frantically started scouring Google trying to figure out who this Max might have been. So if anybody out there knows who Max might have been from previous seasons, definitely let me know in the comments below. But I know I'm going to post this video in like 5 minutes later and be like, that's exactly who that was. In any event, Mike slowly but surely gets his strength back. We see him making repairs to the property, and during this time he gets a call from Jimmy, who wants to hire him for some good old-fashioned private investigator work, but Mike turns him down. But finally, Gus comes to pay him a visit, and Gus basically says that he is going to war with the Salamancas, and he needs soldiers, and the reason he wants Mike is that Mike is someone who he feels like understands the concept of revenge. And while they're sitting there talking about the fountain, I thought that Gus was going to tell a story about who Max was, because he finances the entire villa, and he basically plays the role as like a benefactor where people can live there, and he looks upon it as a memorial. And Mike basically criticizes him of trying to do one good thing with one hand to compensate for all the evil things that he does in his business. But Gus reminds him that while he might be a drug dealer, the people that he's going to war with are considerably worse. But the meat of this episode and the comedy of this episode is all about Jimmy trying to go to war on behalf of Mr. Acker so that he can keep his property. One of the funniest moments all season is when you see all these cops and construction workers arriving at the beginning of the episode. They're about to start tearing the place down, and there's this incredible shot looking up at them, almost like they're in a football huddle, and suddenly you notice that Jimmy's head is in the huddle, and he begins creating a series of obstacles and distractions to delay construction as long as humanly possible. Whether it's the address being incorrectly labeled, or calling in archaeologists to look for historical relics, or suing on behalf of the water district, or noticing flaws in the original land grant from the 1800s. Jimmy at one point even takes apart a bunch of smoke alarms in order to create this lingering presence of radiation on the property. We're basically seeing Jimmy do what he does best, which is precisely what Kim wanted. And Kim finds herself in a really strange situation where Kevin at Mesa Verde probably should excuse her from the case due to conflict of interest. However, Kevin misinterprets the situation and basically thinks that Mr. Acker is trying to remove his most dangerous chess piece from the chessboard. And so Kim consistently finds herself in a position where she's having to create the appearance of trying to outwit Jimmy. And while Kevin might be taken in by this, her boss Rich is absolutely not and basically calls her out on it, which leads to this massive confrontation where Rich is trying to protect his firm while Kim claims that she at least is trying to protect her client. But we see in her office she's having to do some real soul searching. And Jimmy at one point basically tells her, look, we fought the good fight. We've done everything in our power. And Kevin clearly is someone who doesn't want to back down from a fight. He actually seems to really enjoy one, even if it means losing a lot of money. Because Rich and Kim at one point show how much money could be saved just by picking a new piece of property for their call center. But Kevin's one of those old-fashioned guys who's like, my daddy didn't raise me to back down from a fight, etc., and so on and so forth. Which led to my favorite bit of performance all episode, where Jimmy's at home, Kim comes back, and he basically wants Kim to act out the confrontation that she had with Kevin, and she's imitating how he's a side sitter and the way he talks about himself and the way he talks about his way of doing things. And Jimmy is pretending to be Kim, but at the end of the conversation, Jimmy's so turned on that he suggests that they take a shower together, and Kim responds enthusiastically while not breaking character. As always, the love affair between these two characters is the heart and soul of this show. And I never get tired of watching them interact. At one point, Jimmy basically tells Kim, the only way that we can take this any further is if we get mean and nasty and personal and go after Kevin himself. And there's this great little bit where we see Kim watching Jimmy call Mike. And I love how she's always kind of studying him and is kind of fascinated by him. But as an actress, Ray Seahorn is always able to communicate just volumes with the most subtle little changes in expression. Which leads to Jimmy bringing in one of the sketchiest people I've ever seen to do a background check on Kevin. And he's pretty thorough. He resents the idea of doing a superficial investigation. He even uses a BB gun to set off the alarm at Kevin's house a few times so they can get inside, search his safe, take a bunch of pictures of all the documents and pictures in his office. And according to him, Kevin is as squeaky clean as a Boy Scout, but he does offer to kidnap him outright with a couple of his pals. Jimmy shoots that down, but we notice that Kim is taking a good, long, hard look at some of the pictures from Kevin's office, and she sees something, but we as the audience have not yet been clued into what that might be. But I think it's going to have something to do with the date on that one particular picture. So who knows what's going to happen moving forward. I'm terrified that Kim is going to get into incredibly hot water from a legal standpoint. And we really haven't seen yet how Howard might enter the equation. I feel like Howard hasn't really played a role in the season yet at all, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see his part beefed up in the latter half of the season. But we got a lot of moving pieces in this drama, and I just can't wait to see how the second half of the season unfolds. But I think that's all I have to say about this particular episode. For me, this remains one of the best written, best directed, best performed shows on TV. And at a time where we're all going to be spending a hell of a lot more time in our homes, it's great to have a show like Better Call Saul to enjoy. And also tell all your friends about it, because I feel like people are going to be out there looking for shows to stream. And I feel like there are a lot of people who still haven't taken the deep dive and started with season 1. But I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. So I can't thank you enough for watching. If you enjoyed this little rant, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, all that good stuff. But I hope everyone out there stays healthy, stays safe, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.